Hello everyone, welcome back to another video with your old pal Adrian, the wandering art historian. Thanks for tuning in for another video. As you know, if you've been watching this web series, we're talking about how to read a painting. I hope you're having fun. I'm having a blast, so I hope you are too. Today's topic is going to be all about stories. Boy, humans love their stories, don't they? Jeez. Stories are so important to the human experience, and it's a way for us all to connect as a shared human experience, and I think that's really important. The idea of oral storytelling was vital for passing on a culture's social codes and values, its ancestral lineage and history, the instructions on the proper way to do things, and a group's connection to the divine. If you think about it, humans have relied on stories for millennia, really. It's basically how we keep track of ourselves, is through the repetition of these stories. And storytellers were often held in high regard in a community or in a civilization. They played a vital role because they were the ones that contained that community's or that society's information. They were like a human library, okay? Sometimes these storytellers were humorous. We see stories of jesters and minstrels who travel telling stories. They were entertaining stories, but sometimes they had a pointed message, and it was often the jesters who could get away with calling out royalty because they were just playing the role of the fool, and it would be poo-pooed away. How interesting is that? Many religious figures relied on storytelling to explain existential thought and complex spiritual ideas like Jesus and Muhammad. And if you think about it, oral storytelling was really important because it didn't require you to be able to learn how to read and write. You could just sit and listen to a story and still connect with it, correct? And the same thing goes with visual storytelling, because you don't have to know how to read and write if the story is being depicted visually for you, correct? That's our transition into pop culture, because even today, the 21st century, stories are wildly important to us humans. And how do we tell those stories visually? Well, my first example would be through television. If you think about it, these are our stories that we rely on. We have situational comedies or sitcoms. They're about 30 minutes, only about 20 minutes of story time. The rest is commercials. That's kind of crummy, but you have a group of friends who are hanging out together. They all have their quirks, and it kind of follows a formula, but whatever the story is, it's kind of wrapped up in about 30 minutes or less, right? Lighthearted, fun. If you want something a little bit more dramatic, that's when you go for your hour-long dramas, right? They're gritty, they're dark. Those are your police dramas, your medical dramas, your lawyer shows. Still, you tend to wrap things up in about an hour or less, right? It's a nice little compact little storytelling, right? But you know what? That's not enough for us humans, is it? It's a lot, but it's not enough, because we need more. We need more stories. Here, this collage at the top is samples from all different types of soap operas, which we often refer to as our stories, right? Going on for decades in some cases. We have telenovelas, right? Yeah, awesome. And even that's not enough. We have to, because like reality isn't enough for us, we have to create some more reality, and that's how we get our reality TV, right? But we know that's all fake, right? It's all scripted, but it's kind of fun to pretend that it's real, right? Because it's a story. right? It's somebody else's story. We're peeking in on somebody else's life, and that's fun. But is this enough? Is this enough for us humans who crave stories? Heck no. Heck no. It's not enough because we need it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, right? We got to stream those stories on all different platforms because we need those stories at a moment's notice. Why do we need those stories? We feel an emotional connection to those stories. Sometimes when you're feeling stressed out or you have big feelings, sometimes it's good to watch a sad movie. You cry, you feel better. Same thing with a comedy. Something that might be more lighthearted gives you the opportunity to laugh. We connect with these human stories. Now, I want to do a little experiment, shall we? Okay. Because I want to show you how important these stories are to us. Because I don't know if you've noticed this, but our favorite stories we tell over and over again. Okay? And I'm going to put some images up on the screen. I'm not going to tell you anything about those images. And I want you to see if you can guess what the story is behind those images. A story we've told over and over and over again. You ready? Okay, here we go. I have 4 different images here. Can you guess what story it is? If you said it's A Star is Born, you are correct. I don't have to tell you the actors in these roles. I don't have to tell you the names of the characters. I don't even have to point out that this top one here is Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga, or as I like to refer to them as Gaga and B. Coops. You just know these stories. We long for these stories, and we find a sort of comfort in telling our favorite stories over and over again. Yes, I know there is a lot of talk about how Hollywood repeats the same stories. We do remakes, we do reboots, etc., and it's a lack of creativity or lack of originality, and there is some truth to that. But the other part of the truth is that humans love to be comforted with their favorite stories, and the studios wouldn't make these films over and over again if they didn't know people would show up over and over again. We're comforted by kind of knowing that the story turns out okay, right? There's also a little bit of human curiosity that's associated with making a movie over and over again or telling a story over and over again because we're a little bit curious. What is that writer going to do with the story? What is that director going to do with the story? How are they going to change things just a little bit? So that curiosity kind of drives us to see what little changes are made with each telling or retelling of that story. Because if you think about it, it's probably why we have so many Batman movies, right? Through the years, this is a character we love to revisit every few years with a few tweaks here and there, but we still seem to know the general outline of the story, who are the good guys, who are the bad guys, what's the tragedy that propels Bruce Wayne into this new life, etc., and so forth. Correct? Right. Think about this. How many Spider-Man movies do we really need? Well, we kind of need all of them, right? If you think about it, this is a beautiful underdog story about a teenager who's super smart, kind of clever, pretty witty, who gets turned into a superhero. And that's pretty cool. And we love to tell stories like that over and over again. Okay? Now, the same thing goes for art history. And one of those stories I would like to share with you today. That is the story of Judith and Holofernes. Now, yeah, if you're wondering, gee, Adrian, things got kind of murdery real quick here, you're right. things did get pretty murdery all of a sudden. However, this is a story that gets told again and again throughout art history, through centuries of art. It's fascinating, okay? Let us look at this painting together, and then I will tell you the story of Judith and Holofernes. Shall we? So if you see, we have this beautiful painting, and the background's very dark, isn't it? But because the background is very dark, it makes the figures in the foreground really stand out, doesn't it? They feel very close to us, very close to the picture plane, if you will. We have this beautiful red drape here in the background that creates a sense of drama, if you will. Here we have this gentleman who's in a state of decapitation in the process of. Yikes. We have this nice young lady who is doing the decapitation, and then next to her we have an older woman carrying a brown bag. I think she's there waiting to capture the head. Right? Okay. So what is this story? This is a story of Judith. She is a young widow. It's a religious story. It's from one of those extra books of the Bible, right? The book of Judith. Some biblical books don't make it to the final cut, the bestseller. However, they still have these amazing stories. One of them is the story of Judith. She is a young widow. She is Jewish. Her village is surrounded, it finds itself surrounded by the Assyrian army. The Assyrians are the worst of the worst of the worst. They're warmongers. It's not just murder, it's rape, it's pillage. They tortured. Just maybe Google it. It's a lot. It's a lot. They're terrible. And their general is Holofernes. He is camped outside Judith's village, and the people of the village are basically on the verge of just giving up. They're feeling hopeless. They feel like there's no way they could fight against this incredibly dangerous, terrible army. And Judith is overcome. She feels like they should at least try something, right? So what happens is, the Assyrians are very egotistical, narcissistic, cocky, if you will, and they feel so assured that the battle is going to be a bloodbath and that they're going to be the winners, that the night before they throw an epic banquet. Yes, they party for the win that hasn't happened yet, okay? But Judith sees this as an opportunity. So what she does is in the middle of the night, while the Assyrians are having a party and the members of her village have gone to sleep, she decides to make herself absolutely stunning. She does her hair, her makeup, her jewels, her gown. She looks incredible. And she takes her maidservant and they sneak out of the village and into the Assyrian camp. But remember, they're having a party and it's been going on for a while and everybody's been drinking and being crazy. So when she shows up, they are just overwhelmed by her beauty that they are like, hey girl, do you want to come party with us? And she's like, yeah, sure, I guess. That sounds fine. And she just kind of hangs out with them. But what's really cool is that while everybody else is getting drunk and partying and going crazy, she keeps her cool and she keeps her wits about her. She's like the sober person at a party where everyone's drunk. If you've ever been the sober person at a party where everyone's drunk, it is hilarious, right? So Judith keeps her wits about her, blah, blah, blah. She catches the eye of the general, Holofernes, who says, oh, girl, shoot, you look beautiful. I want you to party with me. And she's like, well, okay, I guess, whatever, no big deal. So they go off and he says, in fact, do you want to come back to my boudoir? And she says, yeah, sure, I guess, okay, whatever, no big whoop. So they go back to his boudoir, and he is so drunk that he passes out. Blackout drunk. I mean, unconscious on his bed. Just done. And Judith sees this as her perfect opportunity. She takes his sword, chops off his head, puts it in the bag that the maidservant has brought, and they sneak back into her village. Now, the next morning, the Assyrian army is in utter chaos. Nobody knows what's going on. Everybody's totally hungover. They can't find Holofernes. They can't find their general, so they don't know what's happening. Judith walks out carrying the head of Holofernes and is like, "You looking for this?" It is so awesome. She single-handedly defeated the Assyrian army and protected her village. She did murder a guy. Don't get me wrong. She did murder a guy. But he was not a good guy, and she was a hero. So you can see why a story like this would be such a cool thing to paint again and again and again, right? Now that you know the story, let's take a closer look at this painting, okay? I want to point out just a couple of things here. Remember how I said it was really dark here in this background? And that makes the figures stand out a little bit more, and they're very close to the picture plane here. That means we get to see Holofernes in utter agony as his head is being chopped off. But we also get to see Judith. Oh, doesn't she look like she's glowing? Yes, it does. So when you look at Judith, if you think, wow, because she's got this white top to her dress here, it's kind of reflecting all the light, and it makes her stand out even more, like she's glowing, like she's the hero here, almost like an angel, maybe. And then we have her maidservant over here patiently waiting to collect Holofernes' head. And of course, we have this beautiful drape here in red, creating a sense of theater and drama. Also kind of an interesting parallel to the blood that's just pouring out of Holofernes. So yeah, what's interesting too is look at Judith's face in this. It's almost like she's kind of trying to, I'm sure she's never chopped off anyone's head prior to this instance, but interesting how she's the confusion, or she's trying to figure out the proper way to decapitate someone, right? Let's look at another image. Ah, yes, here's another depiction of the story of Judith slaying Holofernes. It's a little bit different though, isn't it? Well, first of all, we've got this really cool pyramid shape. The last painting had everyone in a straight line, all of the figures. Did you notice that? And here we've got this really cool pyramid shape, emphasized by the fact that the maidservant has to jump on top of Holofernes, because I guess he started to wake up. That makes sense. And he's pushing her away, but she's pushing him down. While Judith has a very different look on her face. She looks a little bit more determined, and she's definitely sawing away here at all the ligaments and tendons, and yeah. Do you also notice that the blood here is going everywhere? It's splashing on Judith, it's on the bed, and instead of having a red drape at the top like the previous painting, here the red drape is across Holofernes himself, paralleling the blood here. Interesting, is it? Now, when you look at these two paintings together, you can see a lot of differences between the arrangement of the figures, the depiction of Holofernes, but also in the depiction of Judith, right? We said this Judith looks a little concerned, maybe hesitant, or maybe pondering what she's doing. The Judith on the far right, though, she looks very determined, if you will. And also, do you notice that the age of the maidservant changes from one painting to another? Yes? In this particular painting, the maidservant is much older, but in the painting on the right, the maidservant almost looks like the same age as Judith. I think that's really interesting. Now, the beauty of showing you these two images together is that I get to ask you this question. What if I told you one was painted by a male artist and the other was painted by a female artist? Does that change how you might interpret these paintings? Also, would you be able to tell which one was painted by a male artist and which one was painted by a female artist? Can you guess? Well, the painting on the left is painted by Caravaggio, and the painting on the right is by Artemisia Gentileschi. Male, female. Interesting. Thank you so much for tuning into this video. I hope you enjoyed our brief discussion on stories and the wonderful discussion on Judith slaying Holofernes. It's one of my favorite art historical stories to tell. If you would like, please maybe send me a tip in my virtual tip jar. If not, that's totally okay. Just maybe like this video, share it with your friends, and maybe subscribe to my YouTube channel. But regardless, I will see you next time with another video. Thanks. Bye, everybody.